Kenya, just like the rest of the East African countries, Kenya's debt burden seems to also be something that they are struggling with. But this time around, the parliamentarians in Uganda weigh the relations of Kenya on the rest of East Africa. Let's have the details of this report.
Kenya is a middle-income country with ambitions to become a newly industrialized nation by 2030. Its economy is a developing one, and it is averagely industrialized compared to other East African countries. William Ruto has taken office at a critical juncture, and one of the most important problems he needs to deal with is Kenya's debt dilemma. Infrastructure development projects fueled by foreign indebtedness were implemented in line with Uhuru Kenyatta's Vision 2030. According to Honorable Henry Agon, we are hoping that Ruto would start to improve the economy after the 100 days he mentioned.
Love to see the Kenyan government, now that they have new leadership, we are focused on the first 100 days. The first 100 days for Ruto. What is it that is going to do? For us to be able to show that he has made a difference after those 100 days plus, we need a proper handover. Where the current and the living, the one who is exiting, Kenyatta, shows that I've left you with an economy which is standing with either one leg or two legs. Standing, and it's up to this level. We are talking of an economy with a GDP of around 107 billion USD. Because there must be a baseline within which we started from. They should also indicate clearly, as they are handing over, how much debt is His Excellency Kenyatta handing over to the new person, Ruto, so that we know that after 60 months, from where they left you, where have you gone? We don't want now, you see, East Africa is now new. We are talking of figures, we want to talk about evidence. You don't just talk and bring Wolokoso.
Some lawmakers contend that while borrowing is not inherently harmful, it is a problem that is plaguing East Africa and Africa as a result of the abuse of these loans and unchecked borrowing.
Not bad. The problem with the securing loan within East Africa and within Africa is inflating cost of the infrastructure project. A road, money is secured for doing a road, for doing water works, for doing power dams and bridges, or for doing railway works, or standard gauge railway. It is inflation and corruption which is a major problem. A kilometer of road in Uganda here is one of the highest in sub-Saharan Africa, and yet we have fairly flat terrain. We have a lot of local material like marram and stones. So what the media and civil society and all citizens need to fight is ensuring that the cost and utilization of this loan is put to strategic sector that can stimulate growth. We cannot do without borrowing. Every individual borrows even for domestic purposes. If you borrow money and you put in an investment which has no return, then there's a problem.
It has already affected East Africa. Uncontrolled appetite for foreign money, borrowed money. Moreover, you borrow but you are not sure about the return on the money. Why? Because sometimes we even borrow for consumptive purposes. You borrow money even for paying salaries. That is really so. I think, I don't know what is the right term, the correct term to use, but that's already where we are. It already has affected us. Do you know what it means? Sometimes even we crowd out our investors internally here. We borrow from outside, we borrow domestically. So when the business community wants to borrow money, they can't, because people prefer to lend to government. Government also fails to pay in time. And those are the situations we are seeing even in Uganda here, where we fail to pay money to people who have done work for government. And then you see the economy which is in disarray. So I think uncontrolled borrowing is becoming a challenge, not only to Kenya.
Despite the economy's problems, the departing administration takes pride in infrastructure developments in the water and road sectors. Being the engine of East African community, Kenya, severely hit by inflation, is bound to have an impact on the neighboring nations.
It's a big economy. 170 billion USD GDP is not a small economy, with a population which is well around, I think, 56 million people. Let us drag the maps. Let us see the figures. We want the equivalent of U-boats in Kenya to show the statistics. It is a time when the whole world is seeing and witnessing serious inflation. How is he going to cut down the level of inflation in Kenya down to acceptable levels?
As the nation welcomes a new administration, William Ruto, Kenya's deputy president, who was elected president, announced his campaign platform, promising to lower the living expenses within his first 100 days in office. Kenya's external debt situation, as well as the other East African countries, have been affected in the long run. However, how will the East African community operate with most states indebted to the external creditors?
Region are suffering with a high debt burden, and of course Kenya is also struggling to pay its debts off. The Uganda parliamentarians weigh in on Kenya's relations that's on the rest of East Africa. Right, now let's cross over to the National Budget Conference as the stakeholders put up initiatives that should be executed to ensure that Uganda's economy gets back to the pre-pandemic levels. The details.
Overall goal of the financial year 2023-2024 budget strategy is to maintain Uganda's socio-economic reform programs while getting the economy back on the medium-term growth path 6 to 7% per year. As partners in the national budget, the Uganda Local Governments Association, Advocates for Development and Environment, Private Sector Foundation Uganda, and the Civil Society Budget Advocacy Group provided some recommendations. National Budget Conference of Financial Year 2023-2024 advocated for a consultative process that required several stakeholders to be on board. We're looking at stakeholders like CSBAG, PSFU, ACCORD, and the Uganda Local Governments Association. Now, CSBAG advocated for transparency on tax exemptions. ACCORD advocated for operationalization of the Climate Change Fund. And PSFU, that is a Private Sector Foundation Uganda, advocated for engagement and increased sector development in areas of creative arts, entertainment and sports. He also engaged the Honorable Prime Minister about how such sectors are contributing largely to the country's GDP in the West African countries. The Uganda Local Governments Association advocated for input and help in improving service delivery, that is improvement of the Uganda Road Fund, as well as the transport sector, to create and help the service delivery in the country. We have more.
In the just concluded high-growth economic forum, we got examples of how taxes can actually be implemented. One was where you see an invoice from the exporting country by the time the invoices arrive at our border, the invoices don't have the price. We feel that there should be strengthened in that, especially in automation, but the priorities are investing in Uganda to work with other revenue and administrative units of other countries who will help in ensuring that this kind of ticket doesn't take place.
That has to do with climate change financing. Uganda is a nature-based economy. We have a comparative advantage in the agriculture sector, where we can produce without a lot of investment. But because of climate change, the way we have degraded the environment, what farming is less investment in this sector. Now climate change has come, and last year we experienced the drought. That's climate change. We've seen crises in Uganda, and this is the way to go. I think we should wait for the situation of Pakistan, where the country will be brought to its knees. So what are we recommending? We think that the government should prioritize investment in climate change. There is a climate change law, and it gives a path. So we recommend that the government operationalizes the climate fund and operationalizes it.
Among other problems, the ED Private Sector Foundation Uganda said the government has propensity for enacting business laws slowly. Says they feel undercut since monies are brought in but are not used because executives are unable to carry out
enactment of business laws. And this has slowed down on a lot of the operating environment that is helping to sustain and grow the business compared to our neighbors in the region. We would like to commend Parliament at this point in time for passing the local content bill, and would like to request that the Cabinet, through you, the Prime Minister, accedes to the outcome of that document that will help.
The head of local government associations in Uganda claims they feel undercut since monies are brought in but are instead taken back since executives feel they are incapable of carrying out certain tasks.
At local government, and yet we receive a miserable percentage of the national budget allocation is to our local governments. Our demand, therefore, is that these monies that are kept in the ministries, departments, and agencies should be sent to the local governments that are charged with the mandate of giving the much desired services to our people. The reason for which we exist as local government in this country is none other than service delivery. And therefore, when we are unable to deliver on the much needed services to our people, Right Honorable, we become.
The National Budget Conference stakeholders, and of course on the preparations for the fiscal year 2023-2024, as a number of stakeholders were giving in their advices on how, on what strategic initiatives can be created to ensure that Uganda's economy gets back to the pre-pandemic level. And now let's cross over to the citizens' voices on taxation report, as the Uganda Revenue Authority with other stakeholders held a session, of course, to examine the rate of tax collection. But according to what was observed, most of the farms are being faced by a challenge of capital, and such initiatives can be done. Initiatives like the parish development model can be done to ensure that such a challenge is actually solved. Let's have the details of the report.
According to research by Sauti za Wananchi, a mobile phone survey found out that among Ugandans who had closed their businesses in the previous 5 years, lack of capital was cited by half of the former business owners as the main cause. Other factors include a lack of market and poor demand, which accounts for 13%, as well as high input costs, which account for 12%, and intense competition, which is at 11%, and effects of COVID-19 at 10%, and taxes and tax regulations, which account for 4%, are the main reasons given by previous business owners as to why their companies closed. Likewise, among their top 3 company obstacles, access to money is mentioned by existing business owners most frequently, which accounts for 63%. Other concerns with a financial component but a stronger emphasis on high costs include accessing transportation, which accounts for 35%, the high cost of capital, which is at 30%, and procuring supplies or equipment, which account for 27%.
What we have unearthed in these findings is that the key challenge that businesses face is capital, access to capital, that to a point that for those that closed, when we ask what are some of the reasons their businesses closed, we see lower mentions of COVID-19 coming up. So the key thing is capital, cost of inputs. Those are the major challenges that businesses are facing.
The 5th most mentioned difficulty is the high expenses associated with taxes, levies and permits, which account for 17%.
Shortfalls in tax collection cannot be necessarily attributed to the Uganda Revenue Authority, but also the performance of the economy. Let's not forget that the targets for URA are set on assumptions of what the economic growth will be like in the coming year, how the businesses will perform. Now, URA has the task of actually walking into these entities, and sometimes you walk to the entity and you're able to realize that the business is not performing as predicted. So we need to put into context the shortfalls in revenue collection, that they might be generally reflecting the inability of the economy to serve the business sector, to give them the opportunities to do business, which business opportunities actually generate the tax revenues.
Despite gaps in tax collection, Ugandans nevertheless make significant contributions.
To go just by the shortfalls that the URA has reflected in its performance, it would not give the accurate picture. You need to look at the over 10% growth in revenue that we have posted in light of the COVID years in which we are performing, in which the businesses are affected, and that in itself shows on progress on how the tax administration is performing, on how the Ugandans are contributing more to the budget that runs the business of government. So yes, we performed below target at 21.6 against the 22.4 that we had or we were expected to perform at. But there was growth if you compare to the previous year, and that in itself is something to take home.
Citizens currently support statements that acknowledge the necessity for taxation significantly more than they did in late 2019. 84% of respondents, up from 79% in 2019, believe taxes are crucial to the prosperity of the nation and its economy. However, a large portion of Ugandans are still unaware of the many taxes they pay, which prevents the government from investing in the public services necessary for society and the economy to prosper.
There is low understanding of taxation among Ugandans. This starts with the tax collection body. Do Ugandans understand who URA is? What does URA do? We see that only 50% do understand that URA collects taxes. And we also see that a number of them, of Ugandans, are not aware of the taxes that are being levied on different goods and services. They are most aware of VAT. This is mentioned by 69%. The next most mentioned is at about 30%. So we see there is that gap. And also when it comes to paying of the taxes, most people say that they do pay VAT. We have lower mentions of other taxes. So that tells you something about the current tax base, that it's not really as wide as we would want it to be, that a few are bearing the burden while the rest go untaxed.
Close to half of Ugandans have owned a business at some point in the past 5 years. Among these, less than a half, which is at 21%, say their business is still operating. The most common types of currently operating businesses are in agriculture, which account for 35%, wholesale and retail trade, which are at 18%, hawking at 13%, and small services, such as salons, at 11%. Business owners are currently more positive than they were 3 years ago about the state of their
Uganda Revenue Authority, in partnership that's with Twaweza and Nisisi, held a session in which they analyzed a study completed over the past 2 years on how Ugandan citizens perceive business and taxes issues. One of the main conclusions was that many farms struggle that's to obtain capital. However, this problem may be solved by using the various government initiatives, for example, the parish development model. That's regarding the Citizens' Voice Taxation report. And now let's wind this up as we head to Ntungamo, as the region intends to develop the infrastructure within the area despite the difficulties in obtaining the allocated funds. Let's have the details of the report.
Ntunkamo district is part of the municipal council across the country that is implementing the $360 million infrastructure initiatives funded by the World Bank. However, only 5 million of the 12.5 billion shillings allotted for road infrastructure projects have been used. The remaining 7.5 billion have been transferred back to the National Treasury due to poor progress of the road civil works. This information was made public during a field assessment of the various roads being constructed in Ntunkamo municipality. A thorough audit of the municipal council should be conducted, according to Godfrey Muchunguzi, the resident commissioner in Ntunkamo district, in order to identify these issues.
There are certain things I looked at, it was as if it is, instead of physical accountability, it was just like a bonanza. I don't want to rush to conclusions, but what I'm sure of, there is something wrong here, and which must be cleaned. Recently, I overheard some people saying, there are diseases, you should not be concerned about the other one. As long as you are using government money, as long as that money is not from your pocket or your father's bank account, be sure the presidency must question.
Dr. Isaac Mutenyo, the USMID AF program coordinator, pleaded to the local authorities to have these hiccups removed immediately. The completion of these roads is expected to happen within the next year. He noted it would be extended.
There's a lot to be done. On the roads, we have seen cases where there seem to be a few encumbrances on the road, which we have advised the municipal council to take up urgently so that they don't have other after effects. We went to the quarry site as well, and we discovered that he has actually started production, and I think he should be in position to supply the required different aggregates on the road. So overall, there's some improvement, but there's still a lot that needs to be done by Ntunkamo.
Planning ourselves on a drip and threatening to go to the intensive care, those are not good statements for us. And for us from the presidency, we shall not be part of that at least, because we have to take actions that can liberate that one. They usually say that when the patient, when the sickness persists, you take it to the real doctor. And on Monday, we shall critically scrutinize this one with the town clerk. We shall have a meeting at 10 a.m. at my office, so that we also appreciate and understand some of these technical things, so that we also know where to start from.
According to Jacob Kafreka, Mayor Ntunkamo municipality, a new contemporary market will be built in the neighborhood as a comprehensive measure to guarantee that both locals' daily lives and commercial activities go on without a hitch.
That with our continued cooperation, we shall achieve more. I also wish to request the ministry to also expedite the process of working on the following projects under the program as had earlier promised. They include the Nyerere Road, Fatahaja Road via Chief Magistrate's Court.
USMID initiative is being implemented in a context where Uganda has seen significant economic growth since 1986, a decline in poverty, and an average annual GDP growth of 8.1 in the last 6 years. USMID is making a contribution to the second National Development Plan, which has recognized infrastructure as one of the supplementary sectors for growth.
That's the Ntunkamo municipality as they find this difficulty in recovering the 7.5 billion, that's of 12.5 billion shillings that were returned, that's to the National Treasury. According to the Uganda Support to the Municipal Infrastructure Program, $12.5 billion was allocated for road infrastructure projects, but could not be absorbed in time, yet the project still has Of course, months left to run. And of course, that was it from the Western Uganda. And that's it for the news recap this morning. Let's get into a short commercial break. We'll return with the press review and of course head straight to the international news and wind up the hour with the business tips and quotes. Good morning, stick around.